We're going to kick things off, though. My name is Kim Olsen. I use she, her pronouns. I am the executive director of the Roundtable. And welcome to our face-to-face 2024 RFP information session. I'm going to give a visual description about myself and then toss it to my colleagues to do the same. So as I said earlier, I'm Kim. I am the ED of the Roundtable. I am a pale-skinned white woman with freckles. I'm wearing clear-rimmed glasses. My brown hair is worn down with a little bit of a wave. I'm wearing a black tank top dress, and I'm sitting against a white wall with a piece of wooden art behind me that features little houses. And I'm going to toss it to Kinsey Keck.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Kinsey. I am the programming director at the Roundtable, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with sort of shoulder length brown hair, and I'm not wearing my glasses right now, which I usually do. And I'm wearing a sort of ribbed t-shirt that is dark gray with a gold necklace laying over it. And I am in my apartment, so you can sort of see some white, indistinct walls behind me. And I'll toss it to Alex.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Torre. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the operations manager here at the Roundtable. I am a tan-skinned Latino woman, and I have my dark hair up in a ponytail today, and I'm wearing a striped tank top with a blurred background, and I'm excited to chat face-to-face 2024 with you all today.
Wonderful. Thanks, all. Let's go to our next slide. So for those of you that might be new to the Roundtable or would just like to learn a little bit more about us, the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable is a grassroots service organization working to improve and advance arts education across New York City schools, communities, and beyond. We're a community of organizations and practitioners that shares information, provides professional development, and communicates to the public or with the public to promote our work in schools and beyond. Really, our goal is helping to advance arts education. We do that through PD, through regranting, and also through advocacy work, really helping to help you, practitioners working in the field, do their best work in and through the arts. See, next slide. Our values are continual learning and improvement through the exchange of ideas, skills, and knowledge, the mutual support and shared aspirations of our diverse community, and the power of the arts to activate learning and change lives, all of which are very much encapsulated by our face-to-face conference, which has been a hallmark program of the Roundtable since we first began in 1992. So our agenda for today, we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the face-to-face conference. This is going to be our 31st annual conference. We're going to walk through the RFP timeline and overview. We'll walk through the application as well. We'll talk about the scoring rubric, have some time for Q&A, and then end with just a final closing. With regards to questions, we are an interactive group, so feel free to pop stuff in the chat as we go through. If there are questions that we're able to answer in the moment via chat, we will. However, if there are more in-depth questions, or if you want to be able to come off mute and ask a question directly, we just kindly ask that you save those for the end for our Q&A period. Last but not least, also, take care of yourself. You can be on camera, off camera, it's totally up to you. Feel free to have a snack, grab some water, have lunch. We're a you do you type of organization. See, I think that is it on my end. And now I'm going to toss it over to Kinsey to talk a little bit about the conference.
Thanks, Kim. As we start to talk about face-to-face, Alex, you can go to the next slide. I just want to launch a quick Zoom poll and kind of get an idea of who is in the room. Okay, I think we are launched. So basically just curious to see who here has attended face-to-face before, if you've presented or not. So please fill that out as we sort of talk about the conference itself. Next slide, please, Alex. So what is face-to-face? Well, for those who don't know, face-to-face has been around. This will be its 31st year. Which we're so proud of. So this last year was our 30th anniversary conference. It is the largest arts education convening of its kind in New York State. Face-to-Face 2024 will be, as I said, our 31st. It will convene arts ed practitioners for moments of learning, growth, and connection. Presenters at Face-to-Face share best practices. They discuss local, state, national, and international policy. They address enduring issues, including but not limited to quality, assessment, sustainability, professional development, equity and inclusion, art and social justice, and the list goes on and on. In terms of audience, our audience is varied, it is wide, and there are so many different people who end up attending face-to-face, from arts administrators, teaching artists, school personnel, and people who teach at the DOE, students, funders, consultants, and representatives of community-based organizations all join us at the conference. They cover all different types of art forms that you can even imagine. We have folks who are students and emerging practitioners to come all the way up to folks who have been in the field for 20, 25, 30 plus years. So it's a really diverse crowd, and we wouldn't have it any other way. It's a really, really fun group to pull together, and quite large as well. So in 2023, this last year, we had 713 total registrants for the conference, with over 400 of those people attending for the in-person piece. Much like last year, this year will also be a hybrid conference. So last year we had 1 week of virtual sessions leading up to a finale of 2 in-person days at Riverside Church. Before we move to more details, you can leave that, Alex, that's great. I just wanted to end our poll and see who we've got here. So 32% of people have never attended face-to-face. That's very exciting. And then some folks have been in person or virtual only, and 18% have been to both, which is wonderful. And wow, 82% of you have not presented at face-to-face before, which is amazing. That's why we're hosting this session. So this is great. Thank you all for taking the time. I just kind of wanted to get a read of who is here. And you are in the right place to learn about presenting at face-to-face. So the 2024 conference, our conference dates are set. Those are going to be April 15th to the 25th in 2024. Those first dates, April 15th to the 22nd, are going to be online programming. And then our in-person dates are back-to-back, April 24th and 25th. That's a Wednesday and a Thursday at Shepard Hall, which is part of the City College of New York in Harlem. For folks who want to do sort of a more in-depth dive of last year's conference, we do have a report that I can share with you in the chat in just a moment, in case you're interested in seeing more in-depth picture of what happened during the conference last year. Next slide.
So a little bit more about the RFP process timeline. And I did want to, just before we move on to this, I'm anticipating a potential question, but Kinsey, to clarify, the exact dates, like the exact days that we will have virtual presentations, have not yet been set. We have a window of time that will include virtual presentations. So that those first chunk of days that Kinsey mentioned will be those days, but we have not yet determined, like, on this Monday we will have a session. So just a heads up about that. There's some flexibility there. And now to dive into the RFP process. So the RFP is open. It's open right now. The info session is today. You're here. So the next kind of key date is these applications are due on Thursday, September 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern. We will be closing that link at 7 p.m. Eastern that day. We are anticipating about a month and a half for deliberation. So we are aiming to notify applicants of whether their proposal has been selected by Friday, December 15th. And then we will be hosting 2 accepted presenter orientations that are outlined here. So we do ask that you kind of mentally and perhaps literally in your calendar hold those orientation times should your RFP be selected, so that you're able to get all the information you need about next steps from there.
Great. We're going to dive into some FAQs now. You'll also find these on our website, but I just find this helpful to go over, especially for those that might be new to face-to-face. A question we've gotten before is why an RFP? And the reason being is we find that it gives a greater variety in presenters and topics, that the conference has become so expansive that really we love to have an open invitation for our arts education community and really beyond our arts education community to share ideas, thoughts, things that they would like to present on. And in terms of, let's see, in terms of sort of what we're looking for, keep in mind the spectrum of participants that we mentioned earlier as to who's going to be attending the conference. So we have folks that are students all the way through folks that are much more experienced in the field. And so I would encourage you, as you are thinking about what session to propose, we're always looking, especially for sessions that dig a little deeper and go beyond sort of a surface level in 101. Although those sessions are great, we love to be able to provide sessions that help meet the needs of our overall community.
Our next question is, who is eligible to submit? And the answer is everyone. You can submit a proposal as an individual presenter, as a group of individuals, if you have some folks that you want to get together and present something with. You can also submit as a representative or a group of representatives from an organization or a company or a school. So it's really open to anyone, but Alex, I want to toss it to you.
But can you submit more than once? So while you are welcome to submit more than one session proposal, whether it's as an organization or as an individual, we do share that our conference policy is that individuals and organizations can only present one session. So this just exists to increase the range of diversity of conference presenters and just provide more equitable opportunities across the field. So we do encourage you to talk to your colleagues to see if they are planning to apply. What this means is that if we receive several submissions from folks that all work at the same organization, we will only be selecting one of those. So that's the policy that we've selected to make sure that we represent a wide variety of organizations and folks in New York City and beyond.
Yes, and just adding to that, if you submit more than one application yourself, please know that only a maximum of one of those would be accepted.
And a question we oftentimes receive on this as well is, I'm a teaching artist that works at 5 or 6 different organizations. What do I do? In those cases, it's okay for you just to apply as you. However, sometimes teaching artists will apply, say, with their specific organization. And in that case, we will count it as being connected to that organization. So for example, say if the Roundtable was one of the places that Alex works, she works at 3 other organizations. She's welcome to apply with any of those or just on her own. Happy to sort of, if you have a question about this as you are thinking about your application, we're happy to chat offline about the nuance of it. Let's see. Next question. Do I need to have all of the details, all of the presenter information before submitting? And the answer here is really ideally yes. You can submit an application without all of those details. We recognize sometimes, say you're putting together a panel, you want to have a teacher be involved or a member of your company, but you're not sure who. We understand that happens. However, please know that the application is the best sort of representation for you to give us all the information about your session. So if all of that information is lacking, it could affect your application. You'll see in our rubric that this information is used to directly determine scores for proposals. And if you don't have the specifics, we just ask that you share everything that you do know about your co-presenters that you plan to invite. Yeah, and simply just that a strong application will have this information completed and included if you're able to.
Great. Our next question is, how are selections made? So I just want to state that a majority of the sessions that are presented at face-to-face are selected through this RFP process. For context, last year's conference, or this just past conference in April, I think we had 33 or 34 total sessions that took place at the conference, virtually and in person. 26 of those were selected from this process. Proposed sessions are reviewed by roundtable staff and a review committee that consists of 8 to 12 arts education practitioners that represent multiple different careers, organizations, disciplines, and tenures in the field of arts education. And we'll go a little bit further in depth on this when we talk about the rubric near the end of our session today. But the conference committee is also intentional in identifying gaps in topics and art forms based on the proposals that we receive and current events happening in the field. So that's where those additional sessions came in, that 7 or 8 sessions that weren't accepted from the RFP process last year were curated by our conference committee. And for reference as well, we're expecting this year to get more proposals, to receive more proposals than we have ever received before. In 2023, we received 85 proposals through this process, and we accepted 26, just to sort of give a clear idea of the percentage of proposals that will be accepted this year, depending on how many we get.
And last but not least, will accepted presenters be paid? Yes, of course. So each presenter will receive a $100 honorarium, as well as free admission to the complete conference, and that admission is non-transferable. We do have to note, though, for those of you applying or submitting RFPs outside of New York City, throughout the process, as you'll see, you'll be able to select if you are interested in virtually presenting or in-person presenting. If you select in person and you are selected to present in person and are not based in New York, the roundtable does not cover travel or accommodations at this time. So that $100 honorarium is the only compensation for presenting at face to face.
Okay, it is time to walk through the application. So Alex is actually going to screen share the application itself. This is the back end, so it's what we see. But we're just going to walk through it piece by piece. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. The first thing that I want to note is that this platform is SurveyMonkey. This is the first time we're using this for this process, but the Roundtable has used SurveyMonkey for many years. And an important question that folks come up with for this is, can I save my application? So can I start putting it into SurveyMonkey and then save it and come back to it later? I would say no, but it's a little trickier than that. So SurveyMonkey does automatically save an application that you're working on, or a survey, or whatever it is that you're using, as long as you return on the same device and same browser. But I would not rely on that. I highly recommend doing something else, which I will outline for you. So we recommend preparing your application materials in something like a Google Doc, which we do have a version of the questions prepared for that. So I would say review the Google Doc version of the RFP questions and go ahead and make a copy of that. So if you open the Google Doc, I can share it in the chat.
Kinsey already did.
Thanks, Kim. So open that Google Doc, you'll see that you cannot edit it, and there's some clear instructions on the top of what to do. But if you just go to File, make a copy, and save that to your own device, then you can prepare all of your answers to the application in that document. And when you're ready to submit, you can just copy and paste everything into SurveyMonkey in one go, and you should have no problem submitting. I also always recommend trying to submit at least an hour before the deadline. That way, if you have any sort of problem with the platform, you have some time to troubleshoot and fix it. Let's see, we can't make a copy, just download and upload to Drive. Let's see here. I will take a look at that and try to make it something copyable later. Alrighty, so walking through the application, now you have some instruction at the top. And then we move to our questions. So of course we have our proposer information. this will be your information if you're filling this out, your first and last name, email address. Other presenter information is later in on the application. Next is your proposed session title. So this is something that will appear on all conference materials. And we have some notes about your session title as well. So keep it concise and informative. Your title should indicate clearly the subject matter of the session, but also be attention grabbing. Alex, if you don't mind switching back to our presentation and go to the next slide. We have some examples here of do's and don'ts. So this top green box has titles that we thought were successful from this last year. So we have managing out, strategies for successful collaboration, sharing the stage, collaborating with people with developmental disabilities, and community building through anti-racist practices. So I think these all represent sessions that I personally would be interested in attending just by reading the title. They're clear about what they're about, but they're also not overly lengthy. And then I made up some titles for in the red box that sort of illustrate some don'ts. So art therapy with students and creative entrepreneurship. While I do personally love brevity, this makes it pretty unclear what is going to be happening in these sessions or exactly what we'll be talking about. So a little bit more information would be great, and also maybe a little bit more pizzazz could be fun as well. And then we have our last example title here: Moving Free, Effective Techniques for Classroom Management and Transitions Using Movement Techniques Rooted in Tai Chi, Wing Chun, and Other Martial Arts as Taught by Bruce Lee. This is so lengthy, and it does give us so much information. It does have a lot of pizzazz, that's true, but it could be shortened and I think still pack a punch. So those are just some examples there of titles. So just be thoughtful about your title when you're making that decision. Next up, I think we have selecting workshop versus panel. So you'll choose your format. All of our sessions are 90 minutes. We will, let's see, we have, I think it's listed out here in the application, the difference between a workshop and a panel. So workshop, it says a session with no more than 2 facilitators in which participants explore specific techniques, strategies, or approaches to arts-related teaching and learning or other topics. I think the important thing here in a workshop is that it should be activated and hands-on. And then we have panels. These are sessions with a discussion format consisting of a moderator and up to 3 panelists who give brief presentations on one topic from multiple points of view. I would like to note the difference between these two in terms of facilitators. So for workshops, we do limit it to 2 facilitators maximum, whereas panels can be up to 4, 3 panelists and 1 moderator. So you will make that selection here, but then you also have the option in the next question to determine whether that will be remote or in person. So we're happy to offer workshops and panels both remotely and in person. So you can indicate one or the other, or that you're open to doing both. If you're open to doing both, but you have a preference, we don't have a specific place in the application for that right now, but I would encourage you to just make a little note in the outline section, which is a long format piece that we'll get into. You could just note there, like at the bottom with a little asterisk, I selected that I would do both, but I prefer in person. Just to let you all know, we're thinking we'll have up to about 7 remote session slots and then 30 plus for the in-person conference. Okay, let's see. Then we have our sort of quick details that I'm just going to run through. So we'll want you to identify your session's intended audience, the art form or art forms that are addressed, the age range as well that is addressed. And then we also have our session focus piece right here. So in bold, we have here, check a maximum of 2. I feel like folks usually miss that, but we really want you to distill it down to 2 of these session focuses. If these do not adequately represent the focus of your session, there is an option on other to specify something else. But it's just really helpful for our reviewers to kind of have a quick 1 or 2 focuses to refer to when we're looking at so many applications at once to get an idea of what the mix and the breakdown is. And then we get into our more long format questions, which I will toss to Kim.
Perfect. So these questions, it first starts with your focus question, which is you sharing sort of a critical challenge or issue that participants will investigate through your session. Keep it brief, keep it clear, keep it concise. See, the next part of it is your outline. Note that there is a 500-word limit for this section, and we kindly ask that this be shared with us in lesson plan format, if possible. Bullet points are accepted, but this should be really a scaffolded breakdown of the scheduled activities or events that you see happening during the session, as well as the times for each. So say if you're doing a workshop, you're going to have some sort of opening activity followed by some type of group exploration, followed by some Q&A. We just want to have each of those broken out, maybe a sentence or 2 explaining what's happening, as well as the times. We highly encourage for all sessions to plan for 80 minutes, that while sessions are 90 minutes long, we know that things can happen. You can get in conversation, you might have issue with technology in the moment, you might get pulled in another direction. So we highly encourage planning for 80 minutes when writing this, and also to include reflection strategies as well. Although there is a very extensive team of individuals that reviews these applications, folks are working across art disciplines, so they might not be familiar with all terms. So if there are terms that or acronyms that are not self-evident, we do ask that you just maybe explain that or write out the full acronym, just for folks who might be new to what you're sharing. Really, this is your opportunity to give us a clear picture of what will be taking place in your session from start to finish. And just, I think one of the most important aspects of it's one of the most important aspects of the applications. Now, I've had the privilege of being part of this process for 5 or 6 face-to-faces now. And what I've noticed is that oftentimes what can work against an application is that folks tend to oversimplify, that they might put warm up 10 minutes, main activity 30 minutes, conclusion 20 minutes. But we really would love to be able to know more information. This is the space where you're able to go into further detail and explanation, and it ultimately makes for a stronger application. And then outcomes. Essentially, this is what will the attendees gain, learn, or be able to do after attending the session. 100-word maximum. Participants will be able to ... At the roundtable, we love tangible turnkey takeaways. That's the #1 thing that we hear from our community, is that people love to be able to apply the learning that they get here right into their work. So I would think about it through that framework as you're thinking about your outcomes and your sessions. Alex, tossing to you for summary.
All right. So the summary is just kind of this final piece that should really, in brief words, and 75 words to be exact, give us an overview of what your session will be all about. So we want you to write this thinking like, this is going to get published, this is what will go on that conference website or the program. Apologies for my dog. And this should really give the conference attendees a clear picture of what to expect, whether or not they should be on their feet, that kind of information about what the experience of attending your session will be all about. This is ultimately editable post-acceptance, as is your title. So there is kind of opportunity to rework or refine as we go further through the process, should your proposal be accepted. And that kind of takes us to this next section, which is presenter information. Who will we be hearing from? So as I mentioned earlier, yes, we want this completed, and we want as much information as you can provide in this section at the time of your application. with the understanding that you may know that, you're on it, you want a co-presenter, but you might not know exactly who that co-presenter is. But the more information, the better. We also, this year, if you've applied before, we are requesting a lead presenter resume or CV. This is primarily because starting this year, for the first time ever, the face-to-face conference will be eligible for CTLE credit, and that requires that all presenters have a CV on file. But additionally, this is also going to help reviewers get an understanding of your experience level of potential presenters, and kind of just builds your application out more. Oh, thanks for the claps for CTLE credit. I see it in the Zoom meeting. So again, if a co-presenter, once you get to these second sections, if they are TBD, you can indicate that, but the more information you have, the stronger the application. And this second section, so this, just because we're on the back end, if you are in it, you will only get one of this. This is for panelists, the first one. So this one has more options for greater panelists. So you will only see one of these, depending on whether you select that you are applying as a panel or a workshop. As I scroll my way down, I do see a quick question in the chat of what is CTLE credit. So that acronym stands for, let's see if I remember, continuing something learning education, something like that. I nailed it. Who's going to correct me? Thanks, Kim. Continuing teacher and leader education. So these are credits from the DOE that DOE teachers have to complete X amount of CTLE credit in order to keep their licenses up, et cetera, and only certain programs are eligible for this credit from the New York State Education Department. Okay, back to our application. So part 3 is session proposers agreement. So this is essentially just a list of agreements that, if approved, we need to have on file for you and your submission. So you have to agree to kind of date and time changes. You have to agree to those virtual presenter orientation dates that we shared earlier. You have to agree to informing your co-presenter of deadlines, et cetera. I'm not going to take the time to read every single one, but basically this kind of just dots the I's and crosses the T's of information that we want to ensure that you understand before you submit your application. We do have the separate question though for in-person. So due to venue restrictions, paints and glitter, any material that may stain the floor, are not allowed to be used during in-person events. So again, we just want you to make sure you consider those things throughout kind of creating your great workshops that you're going to submit. I'm going to take us back to our PowerPoint and hand it over to Kinsey.
Thank you, Alex, for taking us through that journey and screen sharing for us. So I think one really important aspect to consider before you put together your proposal and submit it is the rubric. So we actually have a rubric prepared, a Google Doc prepared that is shared on the RFP website, and Alex is screen sharing it here. I highly recommend that you use this as a resource while planning your session. If you just walk through it and see exactly what we're scoring presentations on, you can tailor your presentation for the maximum score, which is personally what I would do. But I'm not going to spend too much time going through this. But as you can see, we have basically 5 questions here that each reviewer on our panels committee will answer for your proposal once you submit it. The first is on the clarity and strength of your focus question. So looking at your session focus and the focus question that you submit, our reviewer will score you from 1 to 5, unsatisfactory to exemplary. And there are some clear benchmarks here that I highly recommend looking at. The second question is the clarity and depth of your session outline. So that really important main piece that Kim went over will also be scored on a 1 to 5. The next section is the clarity and strength of the intended outcomes and takeaways. So that outcomes section, our reviewers will be looking at and scoring that from 1 to 5 as well. Demonstrated evidence of experience in arts education and depth of understanding of proposed session topics. So we we look specifically at the presenter and panelist resume, CV, and information, but also just the overall session proposal to score this from 1 to 5 as well. And then our last piece is the reviewer's overall priority for being accepted to present at Face-to-Face 2024. So they'll score from 1 to 5 here as well, from should not prioritize all the way up to must prioritize. All of these, each application will be scored by 2 reviewers. So your application can have a maximum of 50 points. And then when we put that all together, that is sort of how we start our review process for determining which sessions we accept. So yeah, I highly recommend using that as a resource. If you didn't click on the link in the chat, it's also on the website. Oh, I also just want to note, in general, as we're reviewing these sessions, in some cases, the conference committee or some roundtable staff may reach out to you with a question. So maybe there's something that is unclear in your proposal, but it's something that but it's still scoring very high, but we need some clarity around something. So just know that during this review process, we may reach out with a question. So I think that's it. Go ahead, Kim.
Kinsey, that's a perfect transition into our final part of just questions from you all. Yeah, so I guess feel free to put in the chat or to raise a hand, whether a physical one or to use the raise hand feature, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Let's see, I see, and I will, just for the folks that aren't able to access the chat, I will just read them aloud just so folks know the question. Valerie in Manhattan, working in Queens. Possible connection to our session outline for this application. I include movement, stretch, and or brain breaks for my lesson for my students in the lesson plan. I'm not sure if this was meant to be shared with all of us, but I would just say a yes and if you think that's something that can inform the application, if you want to think about it in the way that you structure your classes, similarly to how you put out your session outline, that's definitely an approach to take. Yes, Yanni.
Hey, Hani Gonzalez from Just Power Initiative. So glad that we're going to be able to hopefully join the face-to-face Congress again. So I have 3 questions actually. The first one is about surveys. I saw a place where you said handouts. Do we have to submit it first for your review, or how do you see surveys happening? The second is, are we to attend the both orientation dates or just one? And then the overall priority part of the rubric, I'm just wondering, how do you see that? Is that a recommendation by the person that is doing the review, or do you have some guidelines on that? That's about it.
I'll take the first 2, and then Kinsey, I'll toss the last one to you. How about that? In terms of surveys, handouts, if you are presenting in person and plan to give out any handouts, we don't need to approve it in advance. If there's anything, of course, that you'd like us to look over, we're happy to do so. I will note that we are unable to print handouts, though, for everyone. So that's just something to keep in mind. Something I will note, we had several presenters come from out of town and out of state this year. And so some folks did mail things in advance to the roundtable office. That is a possibility if needed. So that was the first one. In terms of orientation dates, attendance is only needed at one of those dates, and only by at least one representative from the session. Of course, everybody's welcome to attend, but yeah, just one session, one person would be great.
And to your last question about that last overall priority question on the rubric, that is a chance for the panelists to sort of give their overall feeling about level of priority based on everything in the session. So for example, I just went through a similar process with this, and there was a session that for me scored like a 4 or 5 on all the top things like the outcome and things like that, but it actually wasn't at all connected to the theme of the symposium that we were discussing. So I had to put a 1 there because even though it sounded like an amazing session, it actually didn't fit with the theme of the day. So that piece there is just one more level at which the reviewer can indicate whether they think it's sort of appropriate, or if they think, for example, maybe they, another example, sorry, maybe the session outline isn't that strong, it gets a 2 or a 3, but the topic is so compelling and the reviewer has done some research perhaps on the presenter, and so really wants to prioritize. That would be a situation in which, depending on the scoring, we might reach out to that person for a question and be like, hi, we have these questions from your reviewer. So it's really hard to plan your application around scoring for that specific last piece, but it's really helpful for the reviewers to indicate things like that. Does that answer that question? Okay, great. And I also just want to note that we had a question in the chat. If there is more than one submission from an organization, only one can be accepted. And I just wanted to uplift that Alex responded to that in the chat as well. Correct, only one submission per organization will be accepted.
Okay. Our next question was, how are art materials supplied for participants in virtual workshops? Unfortunately, we're not able to provide art materials for virtual workshops. Oftentimes we find that we might have 300 registrants for our virtual workshops, yet we might have 300 people registered for all of our virtual workshops, yet we don't necessarily track in advance how many will be attending, just because we found that that can be inaccurate due to a number of factors. So instead, we encourage you to think about what are ways that if you are planning to do a hands-on art making session in a virtual space, what are ways that that can be made accessible for those that might not have access to all different art supplies, or what are different modifications that can be made. So for example, we've had sessions where it was a at-home painting session, and for folks that didn't have paint, they had folks like use tea bags and steep that to make different types of paint. So just to think about that in advance. Let's see, a next question from
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could I add just one thing to that? If you are doing a virtual session that includes art making, I just want to note that any of those materials, like Kim mentioned, like some paper and a pencil and some tea bags and water, those are materials that you can list in your outline, or we can discuss it later. It doesn't have to be included in your application itself, but just wanted to let you all know that that is a communication that we can make with registrants beforehand. So in the email that goes out with the link to your session, we can include a materials list, a suggested materials list. We can also include it on the webpage for your session as well, so folks know what to expect ahead of time.
100%. Let's see, Laura's question is, will proposals by consultants in curriculum and evaluation be considered? The presentation would be based on project practices with arts organizations and not a sales pitch. Yes, definitely. Anybody is welcome to submit a proposal, including consultants. And so, yes, we encourage you definitely to submit. I do love the note like that it's not a sales pitch. We always encourage, whether consultant or anybody, that sessions that come off as more of a sales pitch, trying to sell and share your sessions, aren't usually the higher rated sessions we found by our review committee. So that's just something to keep in mind. But yes, definitely feel free to apply. Kinsey or Alex, can I toss to you for the next question?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the next one I'm seeing is, do you have a typical number of participants for a session? Is there a limit or minimum of participants for live workshops? So generally speaking, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like our virtual sessions can range anywhere from like 50 to 150. Definitely have a large range for the virtual sessions. As for the live workshops, those are essentially just limited by space in the room. So this year we are back at Shepard Hall. So I would say some of these spaces, not all of them, some of them are a typical classroom space. And depending, we will work with you in understanding your session, whether we feel that, a classroom space or like more of kind of lecture space is appropriate for your session. And that will essentially dictate, how many people can literally fit in that room safely. And I would say for those in-person presentations, depending on the number of overall registrants we get, I feel like that can range from maybe 20 to 40, 20 to 60 if you're in a larger lecture hall. Given that all of the participants for the day are deciding usually between 5 to 7 very exciting breakout rooms. So you might have some people kind of coming and going and trying to decide if you're the best fit, which is also why we stress that description that you write, because that's going to help folks make the decision on whether or not your presentation is a good match for their interests.
Yes, I will just add that we do not generally, since we do not have a mechanism in place to determine exactly how many people are going to be attending your session, as Kim mentioned, whether it's virtual or in person. Folks register generally for just the virtual conference or for the whole conference in general, and those decisions are made in the moment. But I do also want to share that we don't typically allow there to be caps set on any of these sessions as well. So in your proposal, you may wish to cap your session at 20 or 25. We don't have the capacity to do that. Previous solutions have been, for example, this year we had a session that was heavily art material focused, and we were only able to provide 25 sketchbooks. So the first 25 people who made it in, who wanted to do the sketching piece, got their sketchbook, and other folks used what materials they had with them if they had it, or they elected to watch. So if you're thinking of capping a session, reach out to us, ask questions, and maybe we can work together to find a solution, but that's not something that we typically have the capacity to do. Laura asks, to clarify, we don't need to include full step-by-step instructions for workshop activities, but we should include a 1 to 2 sentence description of each activity. I would say definitely include descriptions of the activities. I think step-by-step instructions are welcome, as long as you keep to the 500-word minimum maximum for the outline section. Kim, do you want to expand on that, or does that sound right?
I think, 1 to 2 sentence description works fine. We're just trying to avoid like zip zap zop 5 minutes. While a majority of folks might know what zip zap zop is as a theater warm-up game, I think it just makes a more compelling application if you're able to say an energy passing game that tests eye contact and reaction and community work. That should be fine. If there are any questions, while we're unable to give feedback on specific applications or responses to applications, if you have any further questions after this, feel free to reach out on it. And I think I'm just going to skip a question because that sort of relates of, will we have access to this recording again? And the answer to that is yes, you will have access to not only the recording, but we'll also share the PowerPoint, as well as any resources that we shared during this webinar as well. Let's see. And I think this question was answered for the most part in our proposals. Can we include an ideal number of participants? You're welcome to. However, again, that is not something that we are necessarily able to control in the moment. If you have further questions and want to talk about it, feel free to email us. I know our emails will be shared in a follow-up email. Kinsey, if you want to put your email as well in the chat, Kinsey is our main point person for the conference. Let's see, any further questions? Folks are welcome to put it in the chat or come off of mute, ask it live. All right, well, I think I'll close this out then. Alex, if you're just able to share our final slide. And just a huge thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope this was informative and helps you start the creative juices of brainstorming flowing so that you're able to submit. As a reminder, our RFP application deadline is Thursday, September 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The application is currently open now. You're able to submit it via SurveyMonkey. You can expect to have to receive notification of whether your application was accepted or not by Friday, December 15th. And then again, the conference, for those accepted, at least one representative of your session is required to attend presenter orientation on Tuesday, January 16th or Friday, January 19th. We will follow up once applications are accepted for you to be able to register for either of those times. Then the conference happens in April. The online dates are from April 15th to April 22nd, and the in-person dates are April 24th and 25th at the City College of New York, uptown in Harlem. See. Wonderful. And I don't think I see any other questions, but a huge thank you to you all. And we look forward to seeing you in April for face-to-face. Have a nice day all. Bye.